Can you imagine a diabetic who's able to reverse his diabetes so fast that even his doctor becomes a keto convert? How about losing 200 pounds in a year without really trying to lose weight at all? What in the world is this? Check out this video. Well, we're going to be looking at some of the comments, and I just find the comments so interesting. And, you know, the amazing testimonies that I hear in the comments make it worthwhile even to have to put up with the critics and the mockers and the haters. Just hearing some of these good testimonies, it's worthwhile. And, of course, I can always delete those mockers and make it to where they can never say another word on my channel, and sometimes I do, so that's really not all that bad. But here's a tremendous testimony. This fella actually sent me a picture. I'll show that in a little bit. And we're going to look at two testimonies, then a really good question, and then an opportunity for many of you. So anyway, this fella starts out by saying, at 35, I was told I had type 2 diabetes and that it's a progressive disease that's just going to get worse and eventually turn into type 1, requiring insulin. Wow, talking about a bad report. Can you imagine a doctor saying to you, well, you've got it bad now, it's going to get worse, you're going to have to take insulin. Prophecy of gloom and doom. But the good news is, for this fella, he wasn't quite ready to accept it. He says, not wanting to accept this, I started doing research. And I love that. And I've seen that and heard that again and again and again by people who have found victory. They were given a bad report, they were given a dismal future, and then they said, I started doing research. It might be reading books, it might be watching YouTube videos. Whatever way you can research, it's good to do research, especially if you know where to look. He says, I stumbled across low-carb diets and their success with type 2 diabetes reversal. I decided that the ketogenic diet was the right diet for me. And then listen to this. This is amazing. I mean, this one statement by itself is so powerful. He says, within the first week, I needed to come off my type 2 diabetes medication because my sugar was too low. Did you get that? Within the first week, he had to cut all his diabetes medication because his blood sugar was way too low. And that's one of the things I announce at the beginning of every video. I've got that little screen with all the words, and maybe some of you don't read it, but one of the things I mention is it can be dangerous when you really cut the carbs if you're taking medication or insulin, because you could end up having very low blood sugar. So you have to really watch it, and you have to be working with a doctor. You have to be checking your blood sugar. This guy was doing that, and within a week's time, 1 week, 7 days, he had to get rid of all his medication. His blood sugar was too low. He says, by the end of the first month, I had an average blood sugar of 5.5. Within a couple of months, my A1C was considered to be non-diabetic. Well, 5.5 is actually non-diabetic, but he was even lower still. He mentions what's more impressive is my high cholesterol, which showed up when I had high blood sugar, corrected itself. Yes, eating butter, cheese, and bacon. And I started losing weight as a side effect. Again, these testimonies, they all run in similar patterns. You're given a bad report, you're given a negative report, you start doing research, you end up going low carb or keto, your blood sugar comes down, your triglycerides come down, your blood pressure often will come down, and of course your blood sugar will come down. He says, I wasn't even counting calories. You know, that's just the opposite of how we've always been told. Just count those calories. Get your chart out. Count. Okay, I'm going to have some meat. How many calories is that? I'm going to have a piece of bread. How many calories is that? And you count the calories and you say, okay, I'm at my calorie limit. And the ketogenic diet and the low-carb diet basically blows that out of the water. There's just not a whole lot of point. I mean, obviously you want to be self-controlled. You want to be careful. You don't want to just pig out. But the idea of counting calories for many is kind of pointless. He said, I lost the cravings for the carb-rich foods that I used to love, like cake, ice cream, chips, pizza. I didn't have any interest in that anymore. He says, fast forward to a little over a year, and I'm down over 200 pounds. down over this guy was one big guy. If he's lost 200 pounds and he's not as skinny as a rail, says my waist size went from 60 inches to 44 inches as of today. I'm continuing on this path until I get the ideal body weight, but I wanted to share my picture with you. And here's his picture. You can see where he was, where he is now. He wants to continue to lose weight. And you know, the thing that excites me is that from the tone of his comment or note or whatever you want to call it, just from the tone, I know he's going to do it. I mean, I can just sense the enthusiasm, the commitment, the motivation. This guy's motivated. He says, I'm going to lose the rest that I need, and he will. I'm absolutely sure he will. Now, here's something tremendously exciting. My A1C is now resting at, in other words, it's staying at 4.7. Folks, there are doctors that would be scared to death to tell you to try to get your A1C down into the 4s. And the reason they'd be scared to tell you that is they'd be afraid you'd be taking so much insulin that you would go into hypos and fall dead, and their wife or their husband would sue you. And so these doctors will never, 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 never tell you to try to get your blood sugar down or your A1C down into the 4s. And the truth is, I mean, they do have a point. If your idea of getting blood sugar that low is through just jamming insulin into your body, that would be a dangerous thing. But this guy did it the natural way. He did it through diet. He quickly lost the need to take medication. And now he's at 4.7, which is not only non-diabetic, it's far better than almost anybody except the teenagers and the 20-somethings. By the time you get into your 30s, almost every 30-something does not have that great of an A1C. They'd usually be in the low 5s if they're doing pretty good, high 5s if they're not, or maybe even 6s or worse. I love this. He says, my doctor is super impressed and is now advocating lower carb diets to his patients, his diabetic patients. Isn't that incredible? He made a convert out of his doctor. He was so successful, and his results were so good that the doctor himself changed and is now advocating a low-carb or a keto diet to all his diabetic patients. He says, I continue to lose weight. I'm doing intermittent fasting. He's eating only once a day, which is not always necessary, but for people that have a long ways to go, sometimes that is exactly what's needed. He says, I've been in a carbohydrate-depressed state for so long, I no longer have blood sugar spikes or crashes triggering hunger effects. He says, regardless of what people tell you, diabetes is not a progressive disease if you do something about it now. And I like that. Regardless of what you hear, it doesn't have to be progressive. It doesn't have to get worse. Progressive is a fancy word for it's going to get worse. And there will be people, and sadly there will be doctors to tell you, your situation is not so good, but let me just prepare you. It's going to get worse. As you get older, it's going to get worse. But this guy didn't have it get worse. It's far better now. And that's the reality for many. This is not just some lone voice in the wilderness. I'm getting reports like this all the time, nearly daily, maybe not quite as dramatic as this fella's, but I'm getting these reports all the time. And it does not have to be progressive. In fact, you can have better A1Cs, better fasting glucose, better diabetic control in your 60s than you ever had in your 30s if you go about it right. Now, again, it won't always be that fast for everybody, so we don't want to try to suggest that if you do it a week, you can get rid of your medication. You may not be able to. But almost everybody that's a type 2 can get amazing results by simply slashing the carbs. Whether you do the keto thing and you shoot for 70% fat, or you do just low carb and you don't worry so much about the fat, but you keep those carbs down low, and you get rid of the sugar, you get rid of the processed foods, you get rid of most of the bread, maybe not all of it, but most of it, you can see amazing results. All right, we said we were going to give 2 testimonies, 1 question, and then 1 opportunity. So, second testimony. This person says, got sick last year, found out I had horrendous type 2. diabetes, not just bad diabetes or not just diabetes, but horrendous. Machine would not read the numbers. You know you've got it bad when you use a glucose monitor and it simply says, hi, it won't give you a number. You know you've got it really bad, probably over 500 milligrams per deciliter at that point. So this person was in bad shape. Told the doctor, something had to cause this. Let's find out what's causing it. Well, I like the attitude. It's like, all right, it's bad. It's terrible. But rather than just get depressed, he's like, all right, let's think this through here. Let's do a little research. Let's do a little figuring some things out. Something must have caused this. The doctor told him he'd be on meds the rest of his life. Again, a bad report. You've got it bad. You're going to be on medicine the rest of your life. He writes, not so, says I. I like this guy. Not so, says I. I went on a keto diet, only took in about 20 vegetable carbs per day, all the natural fat I could eat in one meal. A1C is consistent at 5.6 now for 9 months. So he not only got out of the 500 milligrams per deciliter state, he's now got an A1C of 5.6. He's had it for some time. He says, threw all the blood pressure meds away, no more antacids, lost 55 pounds. Triglycerides, which is a far better marker for future heart problems and cardiovascular disease than cholesterol. A lot of people say, what's your cholesterol? What's your cholesterol? What you should be asking is, what are your triglycerides? He said, I had triglycerides around 300. They're down to 81. Down to 81. Feeling better than I have felt in years. I can run up a set of stairs for 100 feet, not out of breath when I get to the top. I don't stop going up. The doctor gave me extremely high compliments. He made a convert out of his doctor as well last week, and he asked a lot of questions, and he can't argue with the results in front of him. And I like the way this individual ended his comment. In fact, he says it so well. I wish I had thought of it. He says, diabetes is in the food we eat, and it's stored around the belly. That's so good. I need to say that again. Diabetes is in the food we eat, and it's stored around the belly. You know, if you watch murder mysteries, oftentimes somebody's been poisoned. And they have to go check the last meal they ate. Was there poison? Was there arsenic? What was there strychnine in their eggs or whatever? There was poison in their food. And what this guy's saying is that diabetes is in your food. It's in your cinnamon rolls. It's in your bagels. It's in your pretzels. It's in your candy bars. It's in your ice cream. Diabetes is there. And when you ingest it, that diabetes goes into you and stores around your belly and causes all kinds of problems. So it's not really, you don't really have to be very smart, but you do have to do a little research, a little thinking. And if nothing else, a person, if they didn't like me and says, man, that old guy, he's just, he's not worth watching. I don't like him. He's old. He doesn't know too much. If you don't want to watch me, just read the comments underneath my videos. And yeah, there'll be a few nasty ones and a few critics, but so many testimonies. I mean, one after another. I love it. And sometimes somebody will ask a question and somebody else in the community of those that watch my videos will answer the question. And I'll be going, yeah, I don't have the right to answer some of these questions. I'll get in trouble if I try to tell you. But some of the other commenters, they don't mind taking that chance, and they'll go ahead and respond, and I'll be like, yeah, you answered well. So anyway, if you don't want to watch me, just read the comments. You'll learn a few things. All right, here's the question that I mentioned we would share. This person says, a quick question. Those of us who are type 2 diabetics are probably swimming in high levels of insulin, yet the healthcare professionals want me taking insulin with every meal. Isn't that like pouring gasoline on fire? And of course, that's really one of the main points that Dr. Jason Fung mentions, although I don't recall him using the gasoline on fire analogy, but I mean, that's basically what he's saying, is that if you're type 2, you're already swimming in insulin. You got insulin all over the place. Why in the world would you want to take more insulin? Just cut the carbs way down. But I do have to make one cautionary statement along this line, and that is this. And I've not heard Dr. Fung even bring this up, and I think it really needs to be brought up. A lot of times we see the type 1 makes no insulin. The type 2 is just producing way too much insulin because he's so insulin resistant, and all that insulin is causing all kinds of problems. And that's true as far as it goes, but you can get to a point where your pancreas just stops making very much insulin. You're not totally type 1. You still produce insulin. You just don't produce very much. And if that's the case, you may need to take insulin. And I think sometimes we've gotten in the mentality that anybody who has to take insulin, is a wimp. They're not going about it right. If they just go keto, they would instantly, be cured. But some of you perhaps have so messed up your pancreas and your metabolic system that your pancreas just isn't producing very much insulin. Now, the good news is a lot of times, if you'll give your pancreas a rest, take a little bit of insulin that you need to take, and just wait a while, your pancreas can kind of revive itself, and your beta cells can kind of spring to life. It's an amazing thing. We used to think that beta cells, once they are dead, they're dead, but there are some studies and some case situations that indicate that it may not be so, and that you may be able to see a reviving of your pancreas. So, thank God for that. But how would you know? Well, you need to get an insulin test and find out, am I swimming in insulin? Do I have insulin, just all over the place? Or do I have very low insulin? If you have very low insulin and you're eating a fairly high-carb diet, or let's say you've gone on keto and you don't see any progress at all, it may be you're a 1.5. You're producing some insulin, but probably not enough. And if that's the case, if it was me and my doctor said you're just not producing much insulin at all, I'd take some for a while and just hope and trust God that my pancreas would revive. All right, well, you need to talk to your doctor about that. Obviously, I can't counsel anybody. I'm just saying if it were me, I would at least consider that it's possible to be a 1.5, and I'd get an insulin test done if I had any question about it and see if I'm producing much insulin or not. I want to take a few minutes and talk to you about how this video ministry connected with diabetes began. I've been videotaping various talks and tests about diabetes for quite a few years now, and when I first started making these videos, it had nothing to do with YouTube. I was actually inspired by Dave Ramsey and his series on finances, which he called Financial Peace University. His talks about budgeting and finances have been incredibly popular over the last 10 or 15 years. Not only have they been purchased by individuals needing wisdom in the area of finances, but the videos have been played in churches for groups of people. As I noticed how God was using those teachings on money management, I got the idea of doing something similar in the area of diabetes. By this time, I had written a couple of books on the subject that sold well, and I began putting together a series of videos about diabetes. It wasn't on YouTube at that stage. My idea was this: I wanted to create a series of teachings, blood sugar tests, and interviews that would help equip the person who had just been diagnosed with diabetes and had no idea what to do or where to turn. My thought was this: if I could go back in time and talk to the Dennis who first had those diabetic struggles and the runaway blood sugar, what would I want to share with him in terms of the subjects he would need to help him get everything under control? And so I began producing videos with the newly diagnosed diabetic in mind. But somewhere along the line, I was challenged to put my videos on YouTube. Now, at that time, I knew almost nothing about YouTube. I'd watched a few videos, of course, on YouTube, but I didn't know what it means to be a YouTube creator, how it works, and so forth. Again, the burning question in my mind that I wanted to answer and respond to was, what would a newly diagnosed diabetic really need to know about diabetes and how to overcome it? What are the fundamentals, the foundational principles of victory over diabetes? But after a while, my YouTube videos became so successful and the process became so time-consuming, I had to put the creation of the video series on hold while I just pumped out one diabetes video after another. But lately, I felt the need to produce at least a prototype of the video series I had in mind from the beginning. I now have 9 different videos in the series that cover what I feel are the very basic things that a new diabetic needs to know. I call it a prototype because in the future, I'm sure I'll be doing some tweaks on it. I'll add a couple of more videos and reduce certain segments. So it is still a work in progress, but I felt I needed to go ahead and offer what I have right now to you because some of you cannot wait for a couple of more years to get a more polished product. You need good information right now, and if the video quality isn't always as good as it should be or the presentation lacks a little sophistication, that hardly matters. Some of you are scared to death. You're literally destroying your body with sky-high blood sugar, and you need some answers immediately. I do need to list a couple of caveats related to the series. First, on these videos, you'll see a number of videos that I've posted on YouTube already, so it's not all new material. If you've been watching all my videos on YouTube, you may not even need this series. I think the strength of it lies in the fact that you'll have at hand pretty much all I have to say, where you can go through the videos quickly and conveniently. Also, you may have a loved one that's not as motivated to watch YouTube as you are, so this will enable you to give him or her this series and they can watch it without being a YouTube fanatic. Secondly, in each video, and they're almost an hour long, most of them, there's a 5-minute devotional segment which deals with the spiritual side of men and women from a biblical perspective. So if you're so hostile to God and Christ, you can't stand the thought of even a trace of Christianity in these videos, then save yourself the frustration and don't purchase them. Of course, you could fast forward or click through the 5-minute devotionals, but some people are so totally hostile to God that even that wouldn't be good enough, and they would complain to the heavens about how terrible it is that I would mix Christ with the healing of diabetes. One thing I will do with this series of videos is give the purchaser permission to play them before groups. So if you have a church group or a neighborhood group of people interested in diabetes, insulin resistance, or simply health and nutrition, you, the purchaser, have my permission to play them through a projector in any group in which you'll be there. We're producing these videos and selling them in 3 different ways. The first 2 ways are for Americans only. The third method will work for almost anybody from nearly any nation on earth. First, if you are in America, you can order them as a DVD series and play them on a DVD player. This will cost the most since it's far more time-consuming for us to produce them this way, and also it's the most expensive as far as the materials and the shipping. Another way you can order this series is on a flash drive as MP4 video files. You can use the flash drive to load onto any computer, and many televisions can play MP4 videos from their USB port. Also, Roku boxes and other TV boxes often have USB ports which enable you to play videos directly from a flash drive. And finally, for anyone who has the capacity to download videos, we'll be offering this series as downloadable videos that you can purchase and download immediately. There will be links in the description notes below which you can click on and go to the page where you can purchase the series and begin downloading it. Once these 9 videos are on your phone or computer, you can play them and replay them, put them on a flash drive, and link up to a projector to play them before a church or a neighborhood group. You could set up a weekly meeting where you can watch 1 video each week for 9 weeks. By the time you've completed the series, the folks who attended would have a pretty solid foundation about how to beat diabetes. I've had a lot of comments from folks who watched one of my videos and got so excited about the hope they offered that they binge-watched all the rest of them. Well, here's a way to have a series in your possession where you can binge-watch at your leisure and your own pace, and then when you finish, you can watch them all over again whenever you like. Once again, I put this series together with the newly diagnosed diabetic in mind. If I could go around and hand them out individually to every person who's just been told, you are a type 2 diabetic, I would do it. But I can't do that, so this is the next best thing. Go to the links in the description below and click on the format of your choice, and you'll have options to either order or download this 9-video series on beating diabetes. For the next 2 weeks, I'll have them priced at a special introductory price. But even after that, I'll try to keep the price very reasonable so they'll be available to anyone who wants them. Based on the tremendous number of good reports and testimonies from friends who've been helped to find victory through my YouTube videos, I believe you'll find this series a great blessing and a powerful weapon in your struggle with diabetes. May God bless you. See you again soon.